What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work To Game, and I wanted to talk a little bit about why you guys think Final Fantasy is worth it in 2019 or not. This is a bit of a community feedback. For those of you new to the community, we have had a ton come and join the workforce lately. Thank you for hitting subscribe. Thank you for coming and hanging out. And Brian and I do this first and foremost for the comments section. If we just wanted to post videos so that nobody would see them and we wanted to talk with each other, we could do that without any editing. We could just call each other. And so this comment section is something that means a lot to us. And every once in a while, we like to take a look back over a video that's gotten a big wave of comments from you guys and just pick through. I'm just going to be going through some of the top comments here because the number of threads is insane. And so there's so many things that are whole conversations on their own. So I just wanted to talk very briefly about those. It'll probably turn into a very long video, so let's get started. Now, the first comment, Mintship, says that you definitely feel that Final Fantasy is one of the friendliest and most wholesome gaming communities you've experienced. Within that, there are going to be people who say, yes, I can remember this raid experience where it went poorly and everybody was fine, and then there's I remember times that it's been negative. There's gonna be both. I mean, it's not like we have a doorkeeper that doesn't allow people who can have a bad day or be jerks in chat or anything like that into the game. But overwhelmingly, I think Square Enix has done a great job of fostering a good community that's done through a couple of things. If I had to try to put my finger on what is driving that, I would say, first of all, the style of the game, the fact that I can do just about any content with a group with a few exceptions, and I can do just about any content by myself with a few exceptions, and that actually those exceptions are both being tackled. Single players in Shadowbringers will hopefully be able to use the trust system to get through the dungeons on patch day, and players who want to play multiple players and they have a friend join the game and they're trying to get through MSQ for the first time will hopefully be able to go back with Story Plus and do that with them in Shadowbringers. So that's actually two of the bigger gaps in being able to play this the way you want. And that means that everybody's always kind of having a good time. You're never dragging your version of the game into somebody else's. So if you don't want to clear the dungeon and you want to take your time and all that, you can do that, hopefully with the trust system not just being applied to Shadowbringers dungeons, but hopefully it'll be reverse applied to kind of supplement the squadron system, where you can kind of take it in to clear all of that content, so that if you want to take your time, you can. If you want to not learn how to play your class, you can. But if you want to only play with people who know how to do that content, ideally the party finder system becomes more of that than ever before. And so I think that it makes that very easy to get along with people when the game consistently puts you in situations where like-minded individuals are there with you. The game also does it through consistency. So the fact that once the community kind of teaches you, either you learn it through the game mechanics or you learn it because somebody tells you in chat, hey, when you see this, this ground shape, you got to get out of it, or you got to, when this marker appears above you, you got to run to the wall, or you got to run into stack. The fact that they're so consistent that the stack marker has looked the same for quite a while now makes it a lot easier to do the game with very little communication, which means that we don't always have to get something wrong to then adjust and get it right, which means that you don't always have to teach people everything, and so that means that you're not always correcting people. And correcting people is where a lot of the conflict starts, in my opinion. So I think it's very refreshing. It's a great game. Community is a huge part of that. 2019 is the year of Final Fantasy XIV. WoW is struggling. The new indie MMOs are too far away. And the games that don't have subscriptions can't compete. Yes, so by the very nature of this, WoW and 14 alternate years. 2020 looks like that would be WoW's chance to come back and be something amazing. Doesn't mean BFA can't be great, but a year that you have an expansion and you're competing with the other game's standard run-of-the-mill mid-expansion content patch, the ball's in your court. So 2019 was absolutely Final Fantasy XIV's year to lose. We could have known that looking forward 2 years ago, 5 years ago, saying, oh yeah, in 2019, we'll get a mid-year expansion. That'll be a very good year for them. But the reason Final Fantasy XIV shouldn't have to worry about things like Anthem this year, shouldn't have to worry about BFA carrying too much steam to take away from it, shouldn't have to worry about ESO, BDO, all these games, Warframe, EVE Online. There's still a lot of big games out there that command respectable markets, is because they've done a better job than ever plugging their gaps. Every game has gaps, even if it was literally, okay, it's got 200 good things and 200 great things. Well, they should work on turning those good things great. But that's not most games. There are games that have areas they struggle, and 14 is in that group. So they've done a great job in adding things like the blue mage. If you don't like blue mage, that's totally fine, but the fact that they offered an alternative form of PvE that will carry with us instead of something like Deep Dungeon where they have to remake it every expansion means that blue mage will always be there. From now on, every new player that comes to the game will have this blue mage experience available to them no matter what expansion we're in that they can go back and get involved in. And so making the game just bigger on the whole means you're more likely to you know, make people happy. The housing system's just like that, right? They added the housing system in, right? That took development time, but they knew that not every player will ever even want housing. And yes, housing has had its own conflicts, and it sucks that it's limited in some ways, but it's cool that it's limited in some ways, and that's another discussion, and Brian and I's opinions have been expressed on that a million times here, and you guys too, but ultimately, the game's broadness is what allows it to have so many people playing it so many ways to make such a neat community. And so I think 2019 is their year because they did good things, not just because they're getting an expansion. That is not a giveaway. And I say that because we look at 2018 and BFA does not have the same strength that I think Shadowbringers will. And they had the exact same advantage of having a big, crazy budget, being a big, you know, established audience and having an expansion, and that's not a promise. That is just a likelihood. That being said, personally, I'm really enjoying BFA. So I know when I go look at watch YouTuber videos and they're telling me it's trash and it's garbage, I log in and I'm like, well, I don't know, I'm having fun. So I quit WoW after 13 years to play Final Fantasy XIV exclusive, and I don't have a single regret. That is a very long time to be playing an exclusive game. So that's another note that things like this are definitely there. It's impressive that this game can hold people for that long. I will say on the other side of that, that there are people who take breaks because of that, where there's going to come a point where, say that's 23 years or 33 years, at some point it's like, I don't play Final Fantasy XIV anymore, and it didn't do anything wrong, really. And you'll say, oh, it's not the same game anymore. Well, it could just be that you'll mature and change over that time. So for everybody, that's a different length of time. Some people want to change games after 2 years. 10 years, 15 years. And so I will say that with 14, as it gets older, something it's going to have to fight is how do you not feel so repetitive that people who have been playing for a long time get bored or get burnt out and want to quit? But how do you not change so much that people say, I don't recognize you for the reasons that I loved you in the first place? So that's something that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind when we start to talk about 6.0, 7.0, 8.0. How do they continue to reinvent something without changing it too much? So 50-50. Well, the great thing about a subscription game is, with the exception of buying the expansion, you really over a 2-year period get what you pay for. So if you only want to play for 2 months, you can turn on a monthly subscription, pay, let it hit again, turn it off. I have friends who played WoW for years with just the cards because they liked to be able to plug the card in, get the card's value, you know, play it for a week or so really heavy, and then when the card turned off, they logged out. Oh yeah, I can't remember when I last logged in. I will say if you're going to do stuff like that, make sure that games don't have things like in-game mailing systems and stuff like that, that you're prepared to basically kind of winterize your account, for lack of a better term. Like in WoW, for example, if you let your auctions expire and then you don't log on for 30 days, all that money's gone. And so I would make sure that you kind of log in and you get your account to a good stopping point every day that you log off, if you're not sure if that's going to be the last time you log off for, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, years. Final Fantasy, you're talking about housing. Housing's a big thing that if you take long breaks suddenly and without warning, that you can lose your house doing that. So just be aware of that. New classes, new abilities, and the smell of new adventures. Sign me up. That's every expansion. So it's an exciting time to be in 14. I think that they're getting better at it with every time they tell the story. Every expansion is having a better leveling experience, a better questing experience. The beast tribes are getting better in my opinion. The dungeon design's getting better in my opinion. The raid experience is getting better in my opinion. So I would say across the board with most aspects of the game, they are either aiming for a change that may or may not have hit the mark. Like Eureka didn't hit the mark for me, but I appreciate that they were changing. Deep Dungeon didn't go far enough for me, but I appreciate that they were changing. So like all of their systems, they seem to be headed towards more refinement. And so I think across the board, Shadowbringers is something that I have a reasonable, trying to keep it conservative expectation that everything should be as good or better than Stormblood. I really enjoyed Heavensward. I really enjoyed most of Stormblood. And so I would say that I expect Shadowbringers to have at least some parts of the game that I can really fall in love with. And yeah, some parts that maybe don't do it for me. So I would just kind of prepare for that. Like the rebuilding of the city that's going to be done by crafters and gatherers, just be aware that their interpretation of that, they can't read all of our minds. So there are going to be some people that love however that system works. But by the very nature of that system, there's going to be people who hate what it does to the game. So just be aware when that comes to go into it with a mindset of, if it's not for me, I'll just focus on other parts of the game because it's not required. Same with Beast Tribes. 14 is the new MMO king now that WoW is in such bad shape, and I wouldn't be surprised if ESO takes up number 2. So first of all, nobody releases numbers, and so anytime we get into these conversations, it's very quick to say, because of this rumor and this, but at the end of the day, it's in no company's best interest to release real numbers, especially if the other companies won't agree to do it. And so we'll never know, but I would say that, like, it's kind of like saying, you know, the United States isn't the greatest country in the world anymore, and we were. Well, first of all, like, it depends on your definition of greatest country in the world. I love being an American, but there are things that we're not the best at, and it's not because we've lost that. There are just things that other countries also do well. To say that we're better at everything is just ridiculous. But if our place in the world were to fall within a certain category, let's say we're the best cup makers, right? So we've got these great cups, and then over a series of years, other countries get better at making cups, we get terrible at making cups. You don't just fall from first to the bottom. So I don't think WoW is going to just, if they're the number one, if we're basing this entirely on active subscribers, which is the number of people who are willing to give them money per month, whether or not they play. That's really all that metric means. So if they're the best at keeping people's credit card numbers active, then they're not going to just suddenly lose that unless something happens, unless there's some big public outcry. And so typically they're not going to just fall from first to 20th. And so they've been so far ahead for so long when we did have numbers that it's hard to see how for sure 14 could pass them over an extended period of time. And if they did, it's not like because 14 crept up on them, oh, then the door's open and now ESO gets to come in and BDO gets to come in and all this. So it would be hard to see how they'd fall to third very quickly. I don't think that they'll die quickly. I think that they will die a slow death over 20 years, and we'll look back and try to pinpoint the moment. So if that moment's already hit, and from here on out it's a downward slide, I think it's all hindsight, because we could also see that BFA turns around. I don't want to judge an expansion in its entirety until it's done. I'm starting to come to grips with what Stormblood means. I don't think calling it any time before now is a fully informed opinion, because of the nature of these games. You have all these content patches, you have all these hot fixes, you have all these changes. So when you go in and people are like, oh, I don't like the way the world is balanced. That's one of the complaints in BFA. I don't like the way the open world is balanced. Okay, but they designed the open world to be experienced for 2 years. So if they balanced it around the week 1 experience, is it possible that the year-and-a-half experience is garbage? So maybe they said, okay, what's the best we can make week 1 to know that a year and a half from now it's going to be right where we want it. And so, like, and I liked that the world felt dangerous at first. I actually wish I could have felt more dangerous, and over the course of 2 years maybe you could do things to make certain areas stay dangerous or have a new level of danger, and then certain areas, of course, just like every other expansion, we slowly get our eye level so high that the open world feels silly. It's interesting to think of Final Fantasy XIV as the king. It's their crown to lose in 2019, in my opinion. Even if they don't have the highest active subscriber count, they are the one hitting on all cylinders. They are the one that has their community in a good spot. So I would say that it's their crown to lose. And unfortunately, that means if they do it well, there are going to be a lot of people who are going, well, we expected them to do well. And so really, they're kind of in a weird spot where they either deliver and give us an incredible experience. We all go, that's what I expected. Or they fall short of that and then they get ripped. So I really hope 14 is in a good spot for 2019. I would put my money on it. It's where I plan on spending my playtime, and I hope you guys will join us. So scrolling down, there's a ton of you that are excited about this game, and that is awesome. The story is in a great spot. I think that in general, we're in an incredible position for the current players and the new players. So when we talk about players coming over from BFA, these kind of WoW refugees seems to be the coined term. I would say that it's really fascinating to think about the the people that come over and experience all this for the very first time, because I can't wrap my head around how big this game would feel. I came in at ARR, and so even when I felt behind, I've always been able to close it within a couple weeks. So to come into a game this big, I think you're going to end up with people like Spectacular Insanity. I'm 700 hours into this game and I'm still overwhelmed. It's a huge game. You just got here on November 18. It's incredible that you've already put 700 hours in, but you've got a long way to go. And the great part of that is that it means that you can continue to put 700 hours in at whatever rate you have it. The downside of that is overwhelmed is a very real fear. So how does the game allow you to catch up without cheapening the experience? And that's something that 14 is going to have to address. Shadowbringers is probably the last expansion they'll release where they don't need a total overhaul to the new player experience, in my opinion, that starts to either push them further into jump potion territory or further into catch-up territory, because you're going to get to the point where it's going to take 700 hours just to feel caught up. And that's not a decent barrier to entry. If you have these players that after 13 years want to take a break, how do you backfill that player with a new player if it takes 700 hours? So you can't have the barrier to entry be impossible. So I think something like starting them off maybe at the beginning of Stormblood with an introductory video that sums it up, and then say, hey, if you want to go back and experience it, that you can, that's optional. But they're going to have to do something that brings those people forward, at least on their first class, because otherwise it's just going to be too big. So the overwhelming is something that I would say is absolutely a fear, and Shadowbringers, it's not there yet, but it is starting to get to that point where when you talk about a 6.0 and a 7.0, that's a lot of expansions to have as your initial serving. So I think that's about where I want to leave it. A lot of these comments after this start to have really great conversations, so I encourage you to go back, watch this video, engage in the comment section down below. You guys do a great job of supporting each other and discussing things. It's not just about coming in and watching a video and saying, yes, I agree, or no, I disagree. It's about saying, is there something about 14 that I didn't know? Is there a reason to enjoy it? And know that at the end of the day, we're all gamers here. We all have that in common. We all love games. That's really awesome. And so just like meeting another, like a wine drinker, I like wine, you like wine, that's great. Even if we don't like the same wine, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter the cost per bottle. It doesn't matter how much of it you've had. If you say you like it, that should be enough. If you want to have a more like big picture, conversation about like, oh, how will this wine do on the market and stuff, then we get to start talking about like, well, what are the statistics on who it appeals to and how does it do it and what makes it unique. But the core question here, should you play Final Fantasy XIV in 2019, is will this game be fun for you? And if that is, if you can get down to the core of what that means, it's fun for me if it entertains my friends. It's fun for me if it tells a good story. It's fun for me if it's cool to look at, right? Whatever those things are, in whatever order that falls, that's going to really decide if 14 is fun for you. Not how much it is per month, not what a YouTuber tells you, not what the comment section tells you, not what your friends tell you. It's if you enjoy the game, that's enough. So I hope 14 is a game that can do it for you, and if it's not, I hope you find a game that is. Gaming is absolutely one of my favorite pastimes, and it is something that I hope brings as much joy and awesomeness into people's lives as possible. So without making that any cheesier, my name's Chris with Work To Game. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I hope you had a great weekend if you're watching this the day it came out, and if not, whatever weekend it is, and I will see you next time.
Hey, it's me. Thanks so much for watching this video. You should click here to subscribe and here to maybe check out some more of our videos. So again, thanks for watching. We hope you like this video. We hope you subscribe and join our community. Let us know in the comments below what you think, and we'll see you next time.